Nintendo actually nailed everything when it comes to the Switch 2. The hardware is impressive, the features are exciting, and on the surface it seems like a major win for the company. But there's one thing that's getting some crazy backlash, and you already know, it's the price. Right now, Nintendo is getting bombarded with criticism, and it's reached a point I've never seen. Even during the official Nintendo Treehouse presentations, where they were showing off gameplay for the new Switch 2 titles for the very first time, the live chat was flooded with just one phrase: drop the price, over and over again for the entire presentation. And it wasn't just there. I've seen it in my own comments too. People straight up saying they won't buy the Switch 2 for the simple fact that it's too expensive. Now, sure, we've seen these complaints before. The PS5 Pro's price has been getting roasted online too, but usually that kind of backlash dies down after a few days, but here, it's non-stop. Listen, I'm pretty plugged into the community, but even from a broader perspective, it feels like the excitement around the Switch 2 is getting overshadowed by just how many people are hung up on the price, which honestly is kind of sad, because there's a lot to be excited about. So in this video, I wanted to break down the entire pricing situation when it comes to the Switch 2. Not just the console, but also the accessories, games, and more. Does it actually need to be this expensive, or is this outrage being blown out of proportion? It's not. So first, let's focus on the console. Oh my goodness, I love it. But price-wise, the Nintendo Switch 2 is priced at $450 for the base model without any bundled games, and $500 for the version that comes with Mario Kart World. So at the absolute cheapest, you're looking to spend around $450 for the system. My goodness, this was a lot more expensive than people had thought. But first, let's compare it to the current gen console competition. Starting with the highest is the PS5 Pro, which is priced at $700, and that's without a disc drive. It's the most expensive mainstream console on the market right now. Then you have the standard PS5 and Xbox Series X, both sitting at $500 with the disc drives included. That's only $50 more than the base Switch 2. Interestingly, the digital-only versions of those consoles, the PS5 Digital Edition and the Series X Digital, are also priced at $450, which puts them in direct competition with the Switch 2's base model. And the cheapest console in this lineup is the Xbox Series S, coming in at $350 alongside the still available Nintendo Switch OLED, which is also priced around the same. So this is the landscape Nintendo is stepping into with the Switch 2. Historically, Nintendo's consoles have always leaned towards being more affordable and family-friendly. That's a big part of their identity, and it's why many people reasonably expected the Switch 2 to land around the $400 mark, just a $50 increase from the OLED model. And yeah, that assumption wasn't wild. It felt like a safe bet based on Nintendo's usual pricing strategies, but clearly, that's not what happened. There's a few things to consider here, starting with production costs. The thing has to be pretty expensive to manufacture, all things considered. While we don't have exact numbers, one important thing to remember is that Nintendo is the only major gaming company that doesn't sell its consoles at a loss, aside from the 3DS after its big price cut and the Wii U. If you didn't know, both PlayStation and Xbox actually lose money per unit sold, with the expectation they'll make up for it through game sales and service sales. But Nintendo, they've always kind of been different. Their consoles are built to turn a profit from day one. They're not just playing the long game. They're making money straight out of the gate. And while a lot of us were expecting the Switch 2 to launch at $400, I also think a lot of us didn't expect how powerful this thing would be, especially for a Nintendo console. This thing is way more powerful than even I expected. And I'm a Nintendo glazer. From everything we've seen and heard so far, it runs similarly to the Xbox Series S. We're talking up to 4K 60 frames per second and 1080p at 120 frames per second. That's wild! My voice cracked. Plus, the new larger screen runs at 120 Hz and it's built into the console itself. And it's HDR! Now let's not forget the main selling point. It's actually portable, whereas all the other current gen consoles really aren't. Nintendo really surprised me with this, and I'm not gonna lie, I still can't fully believe it. I'm going to play it in Toronto at the end of April, and my goodness, from what I've seen so far with other people playing it, I'm shocked. Now, for those comparing it to the Steam Deck, one of the biggest competitors in the handheld space, the Steam Deck starts at $400 for 256 gigabytes, and that's the LCD model. Just $50 less than the base Switch 2. But that system doesn't come with a vibrant, high refresh rate screen. And of course, it can't legally play Nintendo games. When you put all that into perspective, the Switch 2's pricing could be justified, I guess, especially if it's just a little more powerful. But is this extra $50 really worth it compared to the Steam Deck and what people had initially thought it would be priced at? Look, this might not be the most popular opinion, but I think in 8 to 10 years, when Nintendo is still supporting the system with new games and updates, we'll probably be glad that it's this powerful. Yes, maybe they could have shaved the price down a bit, but if this higher cost means that we're gonna get a more future-proof, higher quality console, I'm kind of okay with that. I'll take better performance and longevity over saving a few bucks up front.
Also, some industry analysts are saying that Nintendo is actually spending $400 per unit, which is quite pricey. So this once again is justifying the price even more.
And we also can't ignore inflation. That alone makes a $450 price tag feel a little bit more reasonable. There's also the whole conversation about, you know, these tariff things and rising production costs and shipping costs. I don't want to get too in depth with that, but my goodness, it seems like a lot of things, especially the Switch 2 at this poor timing, is gonna just cost more because of that. And we've even heard rumors that the price could go up. At the time of this, we don't know. So I'm just gonna assume that they're gonna keep it at the same price. And there are some theories that Nintendo priced it so hard to begin with just to combat these potential tariffs and unexpected costs moving forward. It's not a perfect situation, but when you stack everything up, the hardware, the portability, the business model, and the economics, it starts to make a little more sense than people might realize at first glance. Now, I know this is kind of a hot topic, and just know that as I talk through this video, I understand it's a hard time out there for a lot of people, and I'm not disregarding that. I'm taking that into perspective. I'm just trying to look at this from a purely business standpoint and really why they decided to do this, and I'm honestly trying to figure it out myself. So let's keep digging into it. Seriously, the Switch 2, it was a sticker shock. A lot of us really didn't see this coming. Now, of course, we have to mention the 3DS, because I've seen a ton of people saying, let's hope this turns out as the next 3DS situation. So if you didn't know, when the 3DS first launched, Nintendo priced it at $250, which yes, nowadays doesn't seem that wild. But back then, that was pretty expensive, and sales didn't really light the world on fire. So the top dog at Nintendo of America, the boy Reggie himself, made the call to slash the price down to $169.99. That's over 80 bucks off. And right from that point on, the 3DS became way more successful. Now, to make it up for the people who bought in early, Nintendo rolled out the Ambassador program, giving them 10 NES games and 10 Game Boy Advance games that were never re-released for anyone else. And to be honest, I don't think that was really the greatest way to compensate people, but hey, it's better getting something than absolutely nothing, right? So, bringing that back to the Switch 2, a lot of fans are hoping that history repeats itself, that Nintendo launches the system at $450, then realizing the price is too high, and then dropping it later. And while I guess that's technically possible, I really don't see it happening. Mainly because, in my opinion, the Switch 2 isn't outrageously overpriced in the first place. I do think it's fair to assume Nintendo might consider a price drop if sales actually start to plummet, which honestly kind of freaks me out. I don't think I can survive another Wii U era, but also people can't play it if they don't buy it. So who knows what Nintendo could do, but I just don't see it happening. And yes, I have been talking a lot about the console, but actually, I think after a few weeks, the console really is the problem at this point. I think it's mainly the games. In fact, I know it's mainly the games. But before we even get into the games, let's talk about these accessories, because I've seen a lot of people say that these accessories are way overpriced. And yes, if you get every single accessory on day one, you better believe you're gonna be spending a lot of money. But I think in comparison to the last generation accessories, it's not as bad as people think. So first off, we got the Pro Controller. It now has a white top. The Switch 1 Pro Controller costs $69.99, whereas the Switch 2 costs $79.99. $10 difference for a new generation controller. Why? Well, the new Pro Controller adds a headphone jack, a dedicated game chat button, and mappable back buttons. It's a meaningful update that modernizes the controller for online play and competitive gaming. So that $10 bump, I don't know why people are complaining about this. That makes sense to me. Then we have the pair of Joy-Con. Started with $79.99, and the Switch 2 is $89.99. Once again, a $10 difference. The Joy-Con 2s connect magnetically, offer improved precision, and include mouse-like motion input in compatible games with better build quality and new tech. The price increase feels completely justified. I'm actually surprised it's not more, especially if it helps to avoid those drift issues, my goodness. Then we got the charging grip. The first Switch charging grip was $29.99, and the Switch 2, $5 more at $34.99. This is not bad. I never used the charging grip, but a little tiny update like this, pretty good, as long as it's sturdy. And actually I've heard during these events that the grip itself is pretty comparable to a Pro Controller. So, I mean, you already have a pair of Joy-Con. If you want a charging grip, and by the way, the system comes with a grip, just not a charging grip, hey, it might be worth it just to get a charging grip and then not a Pro Controller for 35 bucks, especially with these bigger, higher quality Joy-Con 2s. Next up, the wrist strap, $7.99 versus the Switch 2's $12.99. I don't know. These are magnetic. Maybe magnets cost more. Inflation. Again, couple bucks. Not that big of a deal. Come on, people. Then we got the Joy-Con wheels. Went from $15 to $20. It's nothing major here. They gotta make them a little bit bigger, I guess. Now, one of the newest accessories is this camera. It's a $50 camera. I honestly thought it was gonna be $100 because that's just how it rolls sometimes. I bought an alarm clock for $100 from Nintendo and I was fine with it. $50 for a camera is is not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Listen, I have whole other thoughts on this camera. I might do a whole video on it. Like, what the heck is this? The Nintendo Switch dock set. The Switch 1 dock was $89.99 separately. Okay, I mean, it is what it is. The Switch 2 dock set was $109.99. But this dock includes ultra high-speed HDMI and faster USB-C throughput, supporting the Switch 2's 120 Hz output and more demanding visuals. Not only that, but it's got an entire fan on the back to cool the system down. So with its enhanced capabilities, and of course, everything it's doing, this does make sense. And then of course you got your basic carrying cases, your screen protectors. Those don't need to be bought from Nintendo. You can buy those anywhere. You better believe I'll be doing a ton of videos on those too. I love accessories. Now, the AC adapter, which I always recommend you should buy from Nintendo, is actually the exact same price at $29.99. It's pretty much the same charger, but it has a detachable cable for easier storage. So no complaints here. Now, one thing you do need to buy with the Switch 2, which is kind of I don't know how I feel about it yet. We don't really know a lot of prices about these SD cards, but yeah, you gotta get an SD card. And it can't just be your standard basic SD card. You gotta get an Express SD card, which I believe at the moment can only go up to 256 gigabytes. So right now, at least, you can only put 512 gigs in your Switch at a time. Now, it's really fast, like SSD fast. It just kind of sucks you can't use your old micro SD cards from your first Switch, especially if it has such high capacity. But you need to do it because these micro SD cards are a lot faster, and some of these games wouldn't be able to run off of those standard micro SD cards. So again, this makes sense. The Switch 2 accessories are definitely more expensive across the board, and no doubt about that. But in most cases, there's actually a pretty clear reason for that. Better build quality, new features, or completely upgraded functionality. It really feels like Nintendo is aiming for a more premium, future-proof ecosystem this time around. And while yes, this comes at a cost, but almost all of these, except for maybe a dock, can be replaced with cheaper alternatives. You don't need the official Nintendo charging grip. You don't need the Pro controller. There are so many high-quality Pro controllers. Like these PDP controllers, they're actually fantastic. But again, this is not the problem with the pricing. It's the games. We gotta talk about some of these games, especially some of the ones that Nintendo showed off. Oh my goodness gracious, I can't believe some of these. First, let's talk about the Switch 2 Welcome Tour game. Nintendo is making us pay for this, and I'm sorry, this is clearly a tech demo. It's a collection of a few short mini games that show off the Switch 2's upgraded features and hardware. From everything we've seen so far, most of the gameplay looks like reading prompts and taking quizzes. That's not exactly the best way to flex new hardware. And I can't help but compare it to what PlayStation did. They launched the PS5 with a fully pre-installed 3D platformer, Astro's Playroom, that not only showed off all the cool features of the DualSense controller, but was packed with PlayStation history and fan service. It was honestly amazing, and they gave it to everyone for free. Meanwhile, Nintendo's charging us for a tech demo, and so far we haven't really had a single reason why. Now, most likely it's going to be about 10 bucks, but still, if you really want people to know more about this console, I really have no idea why you wouldn't just give it for free. Nintendo Land wasn't free. It was a pack and bundle thing. 1-2 Switch wasn't free, so at that point, I get it. The thing is, Nintendo can do this, so they're doing it. But this specific game is so tech demo-y, they don't even try to hide it. It's literally played on top of a Switch 2. While we're on the topic of tech demo style games, can we talk about this wheelchair basketball games? Like, what's even going on here? It looks like a mix of Rocket League and I don't even know, a slow game. The pace looks super sluggish and the gameplay just doesn't look very engaging from what I've seen. Now, I hope that I can try this out when I go and play it at the end of April, but right now, they have not shown me a single reason why I should buy this. Don't get me wrong, I actually think that it's pretty cool that they're using this to show off the new mouse-like motion input, and apparently, it works really well, which is great, but I honestly can't imagine playing this for more than a couple hours before completely forgetting about it. The art style doesn't help either. It's pretty bland overall and really affects the vibe of the game. It just doesn't feel energetic or inviting the way you'd expect a new Nintendo IP to be, or any video game, I guess. And here's the kicker. We still don't know how much this game even is. Unlike the tech demo, Nintendo hasn't said whether it's digital only, which makes me think this is gonna get a physical release, which means it could end up being more expensive than any of us expected. And don't get me wrong, I love myself a good physical game. Look. See? See that? Physical gaming. But if they drop this at $60, nobody will buy it, except for me, because that's what I do. At least not from what I've seen so far. Nintendo hasn't really sold us on this game yet. Not with the price, not with the gameplay, and definitely not with the overall vibe. Now we've got to talk about some of the bigger games. And yes, you already know where this is going. Let's talk about Mario Kart World. So yeah, Mario Kart World is launching at $80. I'm dead inside. And that price tag has become the center of the backlash. Out of all these new game announcements and accessories, this seems to be the one that really set people off. And honestly, I totally get it. Seeing an $80 price tag slapped on a new first-party title is jarring, especially when it feels like we're crossing a new line. The big question is, why? Why is this one priced higher than even Tears of the Kingdom, which was already a big deal at $70? Is it because Nintendo can get away with it? Maybe. But the truth is, a lot of people, including myself, will still buy it. But that doesn't mean it doesn't deserve the scrutiny. When Tears of the Kingdom launched at $70, there was definitely a wave of backlash. It was the first time Nintendo had raised the price of one of their major first-party titles. But it also made a certain kind of sense. The game was enormous, packed with content, and clearly took years to build, arguably Nintendo's biggest game ever. Even if the price bump hurt, many fans were able to understand the reasoning behind it, and since then, it's generally accepted that $70 would become the new standard for major first-party Nintendo titles. The upcoming Donkey Kong game, for example, is priced at $70, and most people haven't had much of a problem with that. It's a lot, sure, but in today's market, it's somewhat expected. But Mario Kart at $80 hits different. It's not even just about the price itself, it's about what it represents and what it means for the gaming industry. It shows that Nintendo is willing to explore even higher pricing tiers. And if Mario Kart can be $80, it opens up a door for other companies to follow. It's already been rumored that GTA 6, one of the most anticipated games of all time, might launch at $100. Can you imagine that? It's too bad they didn't do it first, or else the Nintendo fans wouldn't have been as mad, I think. And while that game is on a totally different scale, it shows just how quickly pricing expectations can shift. And I say this as someone who loves Mario Kart, but it's hard to believe that its development budget rivals that of something like God of War Ragnarok. That comparison alone makes the $80 price point feel questionable, at least for now. I've seen the reactions online, in my comments, and across the gaming community. A lot of people are just saying that this feels too expensive, especially when it's paired with its already higher than expected $450 price of the console. When you combine both, the whole package starts to feel less like an exciting launch, and more like a financial loan. And yes, it is expensive, especially for Nintendo, a company that many people long associated with being the more affordable, family-friendly option. But in fairness, there is somewhat good news here. Nintendo is offering a Switch 2 bundle that includes Mario Kart World for $500. I'm not seeing enough people talk about this. Yes, this is still expensive, but this effectively knocks $30 off the game's standalone price. So depending on how you look at it, you're either getting the game for less than $60 or getting the console itself at a slight discount. It's not perfect, but it's at least something, and maybe I've just fallen for Nintendo's ruse. But still, there are some savings here. And to be honest, if Nintendo had priced the console at $429 and the game alone at $70, I really don't think we'd be having this conversation right now. But because they dropped both big numbers at once, being $450 and $80, the reaction was loud and intense. Some people are even trying to boycott the Nintendo Switch 2, and they're saying things like vote with our wallets and skip the launch entirely. I kind of have to buy it. It's what I do. This is my job. But I still just don't think that standalone $80 price on a video game can be justified. Now, I could have a different perspective on this in the future. Mario Kart World might turn out to be a massive game, even bigger than most of us expected. Who knows? Now, obviously, this is a big deal, and I don't want to downplay it. It's worth talking about, but I also want to be fair and wait to see how pricing shakes out for other games on the system. My hope is that this $80 thing is more of a rare exception, like something that happens maybe less than one time a year. And I really hope it's not the start of a new normal. So I think it's safe to say that a $70 is the new baseline, but we're still not even done talking about the games yet, because there's another issue that's starting to pop up. Physical game pricing. Right now, we still don't have confirmed physical prices for a lot of regions, but in some places like parts of Europe, we already know that physical versions of certain games are going to cost £10 more than their digital counterparts. And yes, that's very unfortunate. This changes physical gaming as we know it. So here's what's going on. Nintendo introduced these new red cartridges for the Switch 2 physical games. And okay, side note, I love how they look. I like red. It's bright. I'm a moth to a red cartridge. But these cartridges are completely redesigned to handle bigger games we're getting now. Nintendo has said that these new red cards can hold more data and deliver faster speeds, which totally makes sense. There's no way the original Switch cartridges could reliably run some of these upcoming games in 4K, and they're just not built for it. That said, these cartridges might be more expensive to produce than the last ones. Now, of course, as technology gets better, things kind of even out. They might not actually be that expensive, but again, we gotta remember, you're essentially buying a high-speed memory card card every time you pick up a game. One that just happens to have a fancy picture on it inside a pretty little collectible box. And of course, there's not just the cartridge costs, there's also the cost of manufacturing the cases, printing the cover art, packaging, shipping, and of course the cut they have to give the retailers. It adds up quickly, and when you compare that to the digital game, where Nintendo keeps nearly all the profit and skips the physical logistics entirely, it's easy to see why physical releases might need to be priced higher in certain places. But the more I think about it, this sucks. On the flip side, Nintendo also seems to be testing out a whole new system with game key cards. Oh my goodness, this is weird. These are physical cartridges that don't actually have the game on them, just a key that tells your Switch to download the full game digitally. But here's the kicker. Even though the game is downloaded completely digitally from the eShop, you still need to keep the game key card in the system to play it. It's wild. But I think a lot of these games, more than people realize, already do this. For example, when Spyro Reignited Trilogy first came out on the Nintendo Switch, you needed to update the game to get the rest of the games on there. Only the first remastered Spyro game was on it, whereas you needed to download the other two to actually play them, because they just didn't want to put the whole game on the cartridge. Nintendo probably won't do this to their first-party titles, but a couple of third-party games are already using this format, like Street Fighter 6, My Beloved, and Bravely Default Remastered for Switch 2, which is a upscaled 3DS game. It's not like that one couldn't have fit on a cartridge. The idea here is to help developers keep physical distribution costs low for larger games without having to print full-size cartridges that can hold 64 gigabytes. Because if you didn't know, these red cartridges only hold up to 64 gigabytes. So games like Call of Duty most likely will never get an actual physical game unless it's a game key card. In the case of Street Fighter, I get it. It probably makes financial sense to go with the game key route, but Bravely Default, that's a little harder to understand. It's not a massive game, so it's unclear why it didn't get a traditional cartridge. It's most likely to save costs. That said, both of these games are at least reasonably priced, staying under $70. I can't believe I just said that was reasonably priced. But as a collector, I'll be honest, these game key cards are a bit of a weird middle ground. You still get the box and artwork, but you don't really own the game on the card itself. You're just holding a download token. I still think I'll buy them though, unless again, they're more expensive than just going digital. At that point, I actually think I would just go digital. Now that being said, there are still a few third-party games that have confirmed they are getting a physical cartridge with all the game data on the cartridge, like Cyberpunk 2077. Yes, Cyberpunk on a Nintendo console. I didn't think I'd ever say that, but it's true. It's getting a 64 gigabyte cartridge with the entire game on it. That's a huge win for physical collectors and pretty surprising. It's still launching at $70. Thankfully, it seems to be cheaper than the one on Steam still, so what's going on there? But did you really think I was done? We gotta talk about Nintendo Switch editions. A bunch of popular Switch titles have been repackaged in new red cases. Yay! I didn't mean to sound sarcastic. That's actually really cool. And while some of these are just graphical updates, others are actually adding new content. Take Kirby and the Forgotten Land, for example, now bundled with the Star-Crossed Worlds expansion. I'm actually in love with this. The new side campaign looks amazing, and visually, I want to consume it, but it's priced at $80. I'm hearing ringing in my head. From a distance, it's easy to think, why is this old game suddenly that expensive? But when you break it down, the base game is $60 and the DLC is $20. So bundled together, this could make some sense. But you're not only getting the DLC, you're getting the upgraded graphics and all that fun stuff as well. So yippee. Now thankfully, not all Nintendo Switch 2 editions are that extra price. You got The Legend of Zelda, which doesn't really add that much in-game content into the actual game, like a full new DLC pack, and that's only $10 more. So essentially, you're paying $10 for the updated graphics, the newer current gen console version of the game, and then the extra $10 if there's extra content, like Kirby and Mario Party Jamboree. But again, I think some people forget that we have collector's editions and deluxe editions, because people regularly spend more than $80 on those for just a few cosmetics or early access. So when you're actually getting a little extra content, I think there's a bit more justification. Thankfully, a lot of these Nintendo Switch 2 editions will be free if you subscribe to Nintendo Switch Online, which is paid. But let's be real, that's most of us, right? So at least there's options to access these updated versions without always buying them outright, which actually brings me perfectly into the topic of Nintendo Switch Online. I'm fine with Nintendo Switch Online. In 2025, if you're complaining to play online, just buy a PC, because consoles have been doing this for years and years at this point. It's standard across all major consoles now. And Nintendo is still offering the cheapest option out of the big three. Plus, they've continued to support it with DLC bundles, classic game libraries, and now the new game chat function, which to be fair, is already free for a year. Oh, and we also can't forget to mention this button that you're paying for. It's a physical button, and you're paying for the feature that, I really don't understand this button. I just can't believe that Nintendo is paywalling an entire button on a console. Weird. The thing is, all of this, the accessories, the games, the hardware, and the subscriptions, it's just adding up. And this whole new pricing situation is getting a little out of hand. It's already affected the hype and excitement over the console, and that's just sad to see. People want to be excited, but the prices are creating a real real barrier for some. And look, I totally get gaming is a luxury, and prices are going up everywhere, but for a lot of us, Nintendo has always been seen as the affordable, more accessible gaming option. And now the image seems to be shifting a little bit. I'm not saying it's all bad, there are reasons behind a lot of these decisions. For some, the cost might not be a big deal, it's just part of upgrading. For others, it could be a real barrier, especially when you factor in all these separate prices and hidden fees. And hey, even if you can afford it, that doesn't mean you want to throw down that much money if it doesn't feel worth it. And that's what makes it such a big decision. It's not just about the dollars, it's about the value we're getting in return. Personally, I'm excited for the Switch 2. I love the tech, I love the games, but I'm just excited for it. Whether you're hyped, frustrated, or hopeful, I'd love to hear your opinion in the comments. Just please don't be mean to me. This was a little less of a goofy video than I normally do, but hey, we have lots of fun times. Consider liking and subscribing. They're free. So I'll see you in the next one. See you later.